You walk into the office kitchen to grab coffee, and there's a small crowd gathered near the fridge. Someone's telling a story about what happened in the leadership meeting yesterday, and everyone's leaning in, nodding, speculating about who said what and what it might mean for the team restructure. You pour your coffee, smile politely, and walk back to your desk. You didn't contribute, you didn't speculate, you didn't even mentally file away the information for later use. And as you sit down, you think to yourself, why does everyone else seem so invested in this, and why do I feel absolutely nothing? If that sounds like you, if you've spent your entire career watching office politics unfold from a distance, like it's a show you didn't buy tickets for, you're not broken, you're not naive, you're not even necessarily missing out, you're just wired differently. And understanding why you operate this way, psychologically, might actually explain a lot more than just your work behavior. It might explain how you navigate relationships, how you process conflict, and why certain social environments feel exhausting in ways other people don't seem to notice. Let's talk about the psychology of people who never participate in office politics. Because it's not about being above it all, and it's not about lacking ambition. It's about something much deeper. Something rooted in how your brain priorities information, how you construct meaning, and what you fundamentally believe about control, fairness, and belonging. Most people assume that office politics is just part of adult life, that everyone does it to some degree. And the people who don't are either too young to understand the game or too privileged to need to play it. But research in organizational psychology and personality science suggests something more nuanced. The people who genuinely don't engage in office politics, who aren't schmoozing, gossiping, or strategically aligning themselves with power, often share a specific psychological profile. And it's not about morality, it's about cognitive style, threat perception, and what psychologists call locus of control. Let's start with cognitive style, because this is where it gets interesting. There's a concept in psychology called need for cognition, which measures how much someone enjoys effortful thinking, complexity, and abstract problem solving. People high in need for cognition tend to prefer dealing with ideas, systems, and tasks over social maneuvering. They get energized by solving a difficult problem or understanding how something works, not by figuring out who's in favor with the boss this week. If you're someone who genuinely doesn't participate in office politics, there's a decent chance you're highly in need of cognition. Your brain is literally more interested in the work itself than in the social theater surrounding it. This doesn't mean you're socially inept or unaware. It means your attention is selectively focused. When other people are tracking social hierarchies, reading subtext in emails, and mentally cataloging who attended which meeting, your brain is doing something else. It's optimizing a process, refining an argument, or figuring out a more elegant solution to a technical problem. Office politics feels like noise because, to your cognitive system, it is. It's irrelevant data that doesn't help you do the thing you're actually there to do. But here's where it gets psychologically complicated. The people who don't engage in office politics aren't just ignoring social dynamics. They're often actively repelled by them. And that repulsion isn't random. It's tied to something deeper, a belief system about fairness, merit, and how the world should work. Psychologists call this internal locus of control. The belief that outcomes are determined primarily by your actions, your skills, your effort, rather than by external forces like luck, connections, or who likes you. If you have a strong internal locus of control, office politics feels fundamentally irrational. Because if success is supposed to come from doing good work, then why would you waste time managing perceptions or currying favor? The logic doesn't compute, and this is where the friction begins. Because workplaces, like all social systems, don't operate purely on merit. They operate on perception, relationships, and trust. The person who gets promoted isn't always the person who does the best work. It's often the person whose work is most visible, who has built relational capital, who has made the right people feel confident in their abilities. And if you're psychologically wired to believe that competence should speak for itself, watching someone get ahead through strategic networking can feel like a betrayal of the social contract. It can feel unfair. And your response isn't to join the game. It's to withdraw from it entirely. There's actually a term for this in social psychology: principled non-participation. It's when someone opts out of a system not because they don't understand it, but because participating would violate their internal sense of integrity. You see this in people who refuse to laugh at a boss's bad joke, who won't pretend to agree with something they think is wrong, who won't strategically praise someone they don't respect. It's not stubbornness. It's a deeply held belief that authenticity matters more than advantage. And while that belief can be admirable, it also comes with a cost. Because in environments where political savvy is rewarded, principled non-participation can look like social obliviousness or even arrogance. Let me give you an example. Imagine two employees, both equally competent. Employee A finishes a major project and sends a straightforward email to the team, summarizing the results. Employee B finishes the same project, but before sending the email, they loop in key stakeholders individually, frame the results in terms of company priorities, and make sure the leadership team knows their contribution. Employee A believes the work should speak for itself. Employee B understands that visibility is part of the work. Neither approach is wrong, but in most organizations, Employee B gets promoted, and Employee A is left wondering why their competence wasn't enough. If you're someone who operates like Employee A, this dynamic probably feels deeply frustrating. But here's the psychological insight. You're not failing to play the game. You're playing a different game entirely. You're optimizing for internal coherence, for alignment between your values and your behavior, for a sense of self-respect that doesn't depend on external validation. And that's not a weakness. But it does mean you're going to experience workplaces differently than people who are more politically attuned. Now let's talk about threat perception, because this is another key piece of the puzzle. People who don't engage in office politics often have what psychologists call low social threat sensitivity. This means they don't instinctively perceive social hierarchies as dangerous. When someone with high social threat sensitivity walks into a meeting, their brain is unconsciously scanning for signs of status, approval, and potential conflict. They're tracking who deferred to whom, who interrupted whom, who made eye contact with the It's not conscious, it's automatic, and it's exhausting. But if you have low social threat sensitivity, that entire layer of information processing just doesn't happen. You walk into the meeting focused on the agenda, the problem to be solved, the decision that needs to be made. You're not tracking social dynamics because your brain doesn't flag them as relevant to your safety or success, and this can be a superpower in certain contexts. It allows you to stay focused, to contribute without self-censoring, to speak up when something's wrong without worrying about how it will be received. But it also means you can miss important signals. You might not notice that your manager is losing influence, or that a colleague is quietly undermining you, or that the culture is shifting in ways that will affect your role. And here's the thing. People with low social threat sensitivity aren't oblivious. They're selectively attentive. They notice what matters to them, what aligns with their goals and values. They just don't prioritize social positioning the way others do. And in highly political environments, that can make them vulnerable. Because while they're focused on doing excellent work, someone else might be focused on making sure they get credit for that work, or worse, taking credit for it themselves. There's also a personality dimension at play here, and it's one that doesn't get talked about enough. Agreeableness. In the Big Five personality framework, agreeableness measures how much you prioritize social harmony, cooperation, and empathy. People high in agreeableness tend to avoid conflict, smooth over disagreements, and work hard to maintain positive relationships. People low in agreeableness are more comfortable with conflict, more willing to challenge others, and less concerned with being liked. And here's the interesting part. Both extremes can lead to non-participation in office politics, but for completely different reasons. If you're high in agreeableness, you might avoid office politics because it feels manipulative or unkind. You don't want to gossip about a colleague because you'd feel guilty. You don't want to strategically align yourself with one faction over another because it feels disloyal. Your non-participation is rooted in empathy and a desire to treat people fairly. But if you're low in agreeableness, you might avoid office politics because you find it tedious and beneath you. You don't want to waste time managing egos or playing social games when you could be solving real problems. Your non-participation is rooted in efficiency and a low tolerance for what you perceive as nonsense. Both types exist in every workplace, and they often get lumped together as people who don't play politics. But psychologically, they're coming from opposite places. The high agreeable person is avoiding politics to protect relationships. The low agreeable person is avoiding politics because they don't value those relationships in the same way. And understanding which type you are can help you navigate your own frustrations more effectively. So what does all of this mean for you practically? If you're someone who's never participated in office politics, you've probably experienced some version of the same pattern. You do good work. You stay focused. You assume competence will be recognized. And then someone less competent but more politically savvy gets the promotion, the recognition, the opportunity. And you're left feeling confused, frustrated, maybe even betrayed. But here's the reframe. You're not being naive. You're operating from a different value system, one that prioritizes internal integrity over external positioning. And while that can absolutely create friction in political environments, it also makes you invaluable in the right context. Because the truth is, organizations need people like you. They need people who are focused on the work, who aren't constantly calculating social advantages, who bring a kind of psychological clarity that's rare in highly political environments. You're the person who will tell the truth in a meeting when everyone else is hedging. You're the person who will prioritize the right solution over the politically expedient one. You're the person who won't waste time gossiping or speculating because you genuinely have better things to do. And in the right organizational culture, one that values transparency, meritocracy, and actual results over perception management, you thrive. The challenge is finding that culture, because not all workplaces operate that way. Some are deeply political by design, where relationships matter more than results, where visibility matters more than competence, where the ability to manage up is more valuable than the ability to execute. And if you find yourself in one of those environments, you have a choice. You can try to adapt to develop political skills even though they feel unnatural. Or you can recognize that this environment isn't aligned with how you're wired, and seek out a context where your strengths are actually valued. And here's the psychological insight that might help. Your non-participation in office politics isn't a flaw. It's a feature. It's a reflection of how your brain prioritizes meaning, how you construct your sense of self, and what you believe about how success should work. You're not missing something. You're optimizing for something different. And the sooner you recognize that, the sooner you can stop feeling like you're failing at a game you never wanted to play in the first place. So if you're watching this and thinking, yes, this is me. I've never understood office politics, and I've always felt a little alienated by it. Here's what I want you to take away. You're not alone. You're not broken. And you're not doomed to be passed over forever. You just need to be strategic about the environments you choose and honest with yourself about what you're optimizing for. Because the people who succeed without playing politics aren't the ones who magically learn to schmooze. They're the ones who find contexts where their particular strengths, focus, integrity, clarity, are actually the currency that matters. And those contexts exist. You just have to be patient enough to find them and confident enough to recognize your value while you're looking.